decluttered and your space still feels chaotic, you didn't do it wrong. You're just mid-process. Today, we're continuing our organization series with step 3, actual organizing. And if you haven't already viewed our prior videos, please do so. I'm Mary.
And I'm Adrian. And together we've created the Life of Go-Go community over the past 5 years and are excited to bring our venture to YouTube. So each week we drop a new organizing, productivity, lifestyle video. And then once a month we offer a free live, which is a fantastic way to get to know you better and for you to ask any questions that you have of us. We'll include the details for our lives in the description box below. And if you're on our email, you already will get the information so you're all taken care of. So what is organizing? Organizing isn't about where things should go, it's about where they go to support your life.
It's about thinking, grouping, and placing items, deciding what belongs together, deciding where the items live based on their actual use, and deciding what to do with the back stock or the overflow.
Exactly. And we get it. It is so tempting at this point to just want to go out to the store and buy a bin, stick a
Mhm.
label on it, and be like, I'm done. Because you've already done all that work with the decluttering and you're just ready. But the problem is that the organizing step is just as important as the decluttering step because you're actually planning out where things go, how they function in your home. And if you skip this and just go buy a bin, you're just going to be creating more work for yourself.
So don't run and buy any bins. No, no, no.
Absolutely. So what are we going to be doing? So we are going to be talking about organizing. And Mary, we're going to kind of go over just some general mindset tips about that. We're going to talk about common pitfalls that we see with our organizing clients. We'll share some of our top tips, and we'll talk a little bit about how you can apply those in like the kitchen, pantry area or into the bathroom.
Yep. So we are not at the point of bins and finalizing spaces. Once again, step away from the clear containers. This stuff comes first.
Yeah. And we will be talking about the bins and finalizing the spaces next week in the optimizing step. But for right now, today, we're staying in organizing. So we started off by talking a little bit about the mindset and organizing. Obviously, we did a whole video about the organizational mindset in part one. But today, what we're talking about is when it comes to organizing, getting out that notes or whatever, however you captured your initial mindset process and remembering your why. Why did you even get started in this project already? You know, now you're already in it, you've already decluttered, but why did you do this? So if you did take that before picture, now is a great time to go back and just see how far you've come and celebrate that accomplishment.
It's also about reframing the experience. This is not a chore. It's not something you have to do. By reframing it, it is a path to, you're creating a path to a calm morning or a path to easy meal prep. That's why you reframe it into something you want to do, not something you have to do.
Yeah, and you want to also revisit your plan because you now have a better idea of what was in there. So when you initially sat down, you're like, oh, well, in the laundry room, there's only laundry related items. And now you realize, oh, that's not true. There's a whole bunch of other stuff. And there's stuff that you actually do want to keep in the laundry room that now will need a home and an organization process for it. You've also probably have taken notes like Mary last week when you did the bathroom example, you said, oh, like what if you wanted to move your jewelry? So you may have made a note about that or stuff that you want to move in or out of those spaces. So now's the time to review all those items and then use all that input to go ahead and actually plan how you're going to tackle that space. For example, if you were going to do the bathroom, again, we want to be conscious of the fact that we only have so much time and so much energy to put into these. So just like when we were decluttering the bathroom, we were like, you know what, I'm going to do it 15-minute chunks and I'm going to start by getting rid of all the trash and then go in drawer by drawer. Now you want to say, okay, I know in the bathroom I want to move my jewelry out. Well, to me, that's one part of your step, right? I want to make an everyday makeup drawer and then maybe like a special night out makeup bag. That would be like day two part. So you can chunk it out like that as you go through the space, but having a plan of like just a rough plan. Where do you want things to go? How are you going to move them there? That's what we're talking about in this part.
Keep in mind, this is all about what will support your goals, even if they're unconventional. If you pay the bills at the kitchen table, that's fine. If you decide to turn your dining room into a craft room, this is all about living your life and organizing for the way you and your family lives, not anybody else.
Absolutely. And it's also about giving proper space to things that you're prioritizing in this season. So it could be like season is in terms of the weather. So maybe you want to have a hot chocolate bar set up because it's cold, or maybe you want to have pina coladas because we don't want to deal with the winter. Whatever it is, you want to have that there. But we also have talked about the seasons of life, right? So maybe you're in a really busy season and you're like, you know what? I'm not going to be cooking as much at home. I'm going to be doing an online grocery plan, right? So you can actually make more room in your freezer now to support that lifestyle instead of worrying about organizing your spices that you might not be even using right this minute.
And part of the organizing is also storing the extras and the back stock. You need to keep that in mind of where those are going to go in your home as well.
Absolutely. The other thing that we talked about, Mary, initially in one of our earliest YouTube videos was the Clutterbug organizing style. I know we're both certified in it, but we just find this is the aha moment for so many of our clients. And Clutterbug will include her quiz below. She just has an idea of, are you a visual organizer where you like to see your things, or are you somebody who gets overwhelmed by seeing too many things and you're a hidden organizer? And then also, how do you want to find your things? So you could be a macro organizer where you just want to throw everything in a bin and you'll figure it out when you look for the item, or are you somebody who meticulously puts things into smaller categories and just having them all lumped together bothers you? And so that's what the four Clutterbug styles have in common. And again, we'll leave a link to her quiz. But I think that for me, when I talk with clients and I share this, it's either one, why they feel that they failed in the past, or two, why they feel like it hasn't worked with them and maybe other people that they share their spaces with.
Yeah, I think sometimes clients they see the minimalist move and they want to be a minimalist, but they really aren't. I mean, I'm not a minimalist. And they're fighting their natural inclinations. So rather than fighting your natural inclinations, harness them to use them to your advantage versus your disadvantage. And then figuring out what other members of your family are. I'll tell the quick story of our kitchen organization. My husband is a ladybug, and as long as everything's out of sight, it can be a disaster in the drawer. And so he puts everything in the drawers, and then I'm a micro sorter, and so then I go through and sort it, so that all the spatulas are together, all the little whiskers are together, all the tongs are together. So it kind of works out well. He gets them in the drawers, and then I sort them. So, but that's an example of working together with two very distinct types of organizing.
Absolutely. And even with the bins, although we're not going to bin shopping, a lot of times we buy bins because we've been marketed to like, hey, you want to make all these tiny little segments, right? Because then they sell more bins instead of one big basket. But if that's not what works for you, then you're going to be buying products that just don't work and add clutter. So that's, again, take the quiz, totally worth it. It's 100% free. We just really love it and we think that that's going to help you. But Mary, what are some other common pitfalls that you see with your clients?
I think they get frustrated because they're going through the decluttering process and then they find other stuff other places. And it's like you just need to integrate that into what you've already found. Because, yeah, even though we're organizing at this point, you're still going to find things in strange places or you've forgotten you put them there. I also find clients, scissors. We were talking about scissors earlier, and that you may have 20 pairs of scissors. Well, the reason why you have 20 pairs of scissors is because you never had a designated place for the one pair and you kept buying and buying. So it's okay to let go of those things. They're like, but I have 20. I'm like, but you don't need 20. You only need one or two, maybe in the kitchen to do kitchen stuff and in the office to do paper stuff.
We're definitely continuing to declutter in this step. So even though we are in the organizing step, as you're going through, because we did kind of do the easier no mess method way of doing it, we didn't go
Mhm.
through our entire house and find every single scissor we own before we started in the space. Like if you were doing like the Marie Kondo method. And so that is going to happen. And you just got to decide, like you said with the scissors, are they active? Like, do you really need that many scissors? Some people do. But if it's the overflow, go ahead and get those decluttered or create a spot where you have extra office supplies. And
Mhm.
again, just a reminder, I know we talked about this, but we're not talking about emotional items or paperwork or memorabilia. At this point, those are still going to be in separate bins, and we are going to tackle that in later videos, like, in the future. But for now, just focus with the items that you can easily manage and navigate through in these spaces.
Hmm.
One of the other issues, Mary, is that when we watch like the organizing online videos, they're like, oh, just put like items with like items. And that makes sense, like with your pens, like put all your pens together, put all your hair ties together. But there's so many items in our home that are not one for one, or it wouldn't make any sense to put all those items together in one space and then just that's the only place that pens go in the house, right? What are some of your recommendations for that?
Well, I think because we use the pantry and the bathroom throughout these videos is a good example. And I think the pantry is an excellent example. Once again, there's no one right way to do anything. There's many,
Mm-mm.
many, many ways to accomplish the same goal, which is to be organized. But say you're going to put all of your baking goods together. Well, that does not make sense. If you are a regular baker who is always reaching for the flour, the sugar, the baking mixes, that type of thing, that may make sense. But if you're like me and you bake infrequently, then putting all of the infrequent baking items together, like all of the cake mixes, all of the sprinkles, that type of thing, put those together. But then the stuff I reach for frequently, like flour and sugar, that's in a different area. So they're like items, but they are more like, as you said, cousins than siblings.
Yeah.
Um,
The idea of like the cousins and the siblings is like you have your winter coat, it goes with your winter scarf, right? Like they're like a family unit, so you can store all those together. But then you also might have like your formal night dress, like you're going out gown that you wear, once every Christmas. And so you have the special undergarments that you need with that, the special purse that you only use with that dress, storing all those together. So yes, you would have all your shoes together in the closet and you have all your purses together in the closet, but you have the one formal going out cousins group together in the closet. And then that way, like, oh, I'm going to that one formal event. You grab the whole set of items.
mhm. Yeah, so that's yet another way to put things together,
Yeah.
organized by outfit in some cases. So once
Oh,
again,
yeah.
there's no one right way to do it. You can do it lots of ways. It has to fit with your style, your family, your needs.
Hmm. And speaking of no one right way, one of the big things that holds people back is trying to do this perfect. And again, these steps flow and we're in the organizing phase. So we're really in the testing it out phase. So you don't have to feel like you have to finalize anything. That's gonna be next step, right? This step we're just trying to figure it out. So if you move something and it doesn't work or it only partially works, this is where we're trying that out in that process. In my own home, Mary, I have my coffee pot and it's in my old office. And I'm like, oh, it's just a coffee pot. And we had company come over, so I moved it to the kitchen because that it seems more friendly, right?
Mhm.
Here, help yourselves, people to the coffee. And I liked it because it was easier for me to like refill the pot. It just had some convenience factors to it. But what I found out was that I needed all the other stuff that I had in the old office, like the extra K-cups, the extra coffee pots, the all the, potions and stuff that I put in my coffee to make it healthier. So if I moved all that to the kitchen, which I did try, I took a shelf out of the laundry room and I tried it. It was taking up too much counter space. It just wasn't feasible. So again, we're not locking anything in here. We're just trying it. So for me, I realized I'm not actually moving the coffee pot. I'm moving all this other crap with the coffee pot.
Mhm.
And you just don't think about that until you're actually in there doing it.
And that circles back to the whole micro organizing versus macro organizing is you organize in bigger spaces so that you don't go into the weeds and get really hung up on putting little tiny things in little tiny containers, that you macro organize and kind of step back and see how that feels, and then you refine and refine and refine.
Yeah. And if you are somebody like yourself, Mary, who likes things to be in that micro organization,
Yeah.
you can spend all day like organizing your band-aids or
Mhm.
color coding all your necklaces, and then you're gonna say, "Oh, I didn't get the room done, or I didn't get as far as I wanted." I'm not feeling that frictionless life, right? I'm still like tripping over the hand soaps because all I did was
Mhm.
focus on the necklaces. So it's it's coming back and refining it. So if you start larger category, just all the jewelry together, then you can
Mhm.
refine it once you have that space functioning better for you.
Exactly. Yeah, I will get all of the because in that's a project I'm actually working on in real life because we had a some things happened in our bathroom. I had to take everything out and down, and my husband had to redo the walls. And I am working on putting the jewelry back the way that makes sense now. And I just need to get the first set up on the wall and see how it works and go from there. And
Yeah.
if it doesn't work, I'll try something different.
But even keeping your jewelry in the bathroom is, in a way, also how you're including your family. Because that's a pitfall we run into sometimes if we live with other people, is we're not including them or getting the buy-in. So do you want to share a little bit about that?
Yes, I always had, and I have a lot of necklaces, and I had them all in the bathroom. And then when we went through this wall repair, I pulled them all out. And I told my husband the other day, I said, "Oh, I think I'd like to hang them near my dresser in the bedroom." And he's like, "Oh, I don't really like that idea because visually he likes open, uncluttered. We don't even have art on the wall in our bedroom because we try to keep it as uncluttered and visually open as possible." And I said, "Oh, that really bothers you?" And he goes, "Yeah, it really, really does." I said, "That's fine. I'll figure out a different option." And so I found a couple of other places in the bathroom that work better for me, but don't bother him visually. So it's important to include your family in what you're doing because it'll be more successful if people are involved and have buy-in. Um,
Absolutely.
so, because he's going to install the hooks for me anyhow.
So he's not to not notice.
Yeah, exactly. He's not going to not notice. Exactly.
Another
So,
common pitfall is that you're going to get distracted, right? So, we've been focusing on one space, like, so maybe it's your pantry or your bathroom, but you've been in that one item. And so you've been taking items that don't belong in that space and you've been moving them to other places in the house. But now, as we're getting organized, this is when you want to go back and if you know that there's items somewhere that you easily can find to bring them into that space, right? So, for example, with the pantry, we talked about if have extra juices in the hallway from when you did the Costco run and they just never made their way to the pantry for whatever reason, or you have some food in the garage and some food in the dining room and you want to pull it all together. When you're going in those spaces, you can become distracted because you're like, oh, I'll just fix up this space too while I'm at it, or you start churning those items.
right. And churning is really when you're literally just churning items. You're moving piles from one point to the other without making progress.
Hmm.
Which is why we really encourage you to stay in, even if you have to walk into another space to drop something, come right back and finish that space so that you have that accomplishment. You feel accomplished and not just kind of hamster on a wheel that you're running but not seeing any success.
Yeah. And that's also where that mindset of making that plan comes into place because maybe
Mhm.
you don't go get all those items first because now you're going to clutter up your working space in the pantry. Instead, you're like, I'm going to do all the cereal items. And then if I know there's cereal somewhere else, go and get just those items. So I
Mhm.
will help you kind of maintain it and not make it become this overwhelming project. And of
Yes.
course, as we do anything, we have that homeless clutter, which is probably the hardest. So homeless clutter is just items that you're not ready to get rid of, but they don't have a home, right? So they're just
Right.
kind of like floating around. What's your thoughts on that, Mary?
Well, I think it's important to have a little box. Now, we are not going to create a junk drawer. No, no, no. But you are going to have a small, really containable box that you can put this homeless clutter in. And I swear, I've never worked in a room, my room or somebody else's, that I didn't have a handful of things where I'm not quite sure where to put them or what to do with them. And so at least you have them in a container so you can muddle about what makes sense. And what makes sense is you may not need these anymore and you can let them go. Or you're going to have to find a home for certain items. And it's those weird things like, oh, I don't know, little like carabiners. I got all these. I haven't quite figured out where they should go yet. I think it's the garage, but I'm not sure, but I have them in a box. So,
Mhm.
so that's a good example of that homeless clutter that needs to go live elsewhere.
Yeah, and like we're in the holiday season right now too, so like we have some stuff out that it's like, well, when the holidays are over, I'm going to go put it here, but I have a Christmas tree right there, you know? So like all those items, just having that one spot where they can store is just gonna make it a lot easier. The other
Mhm.
reason why, you're going to run into is it's always called the messy middle. So when you're organizing and you're pulling out stuff, even though we've been trying to do it as clean as possible, you're going to have a whole bunch of items that you're pulling out. So you want to make sure that you have a spot to put them. So maybe it's a small table or a bin. Like in the pantry, for example, if you want your top shelf of your pantry to just be cereal, but there's a pot sitting up there, like you need to move that pot. Now, does the pot stay in the pantry? In this example, the answer is yes. But like we don't have a spot for it to go yet because all the other shelves have items still on them. So maybe we set the pot over to the side. But what we don't want to do is we don't want to pull out everything in the pantry and start having all these random items everywhere and you become overwhelmed. So make yourself a deliberate Tupperware tote, like one of those storage totes, or a small table. So the manageable number of items that you're pulling down as you're going through. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, absolutely.
Okay, so I think that those are the common pitfalls. So let's kind of move into some of our top tips. And obviously we talked about, our top tip is map this out. Figure out this process on paper. It's a lot easier. It makes it a lot more manageable. But what are some of your other top tips, Mary?
A lot of things, when you use them, you need to really think about the frequency of use and height. So the things you use most need to have the prime real estate, whether that is the first shelf on a cabinet or as in the pantry, the eye level shelf on the pantry. But really think about that's where your most frequently used items should be. And also think about your personal height. In my case, I'm not 5 feet tall, but my husband's 6'2", and he eats very specific foods. All of his stuff is on the very top shelf in the pantry. He can reach it. Nobody has to worry about it. It works perfectly for us. Height for easy access and use is really, really important.
Yeah. Absolutely. The other thing is that we did talk about the Clutterbug styles. So if you are somebody who's a visual organizer, your vertical is visual. So you might be somebody who benefits by going up the wall space, using pegboards. Horizontal is hidden. So if you're not somebody who's going to do well by making piles on a table. So as you're thinking about that, think vertical is visual, horizontal is hidden.
Mm. And some of the key to that is how you use items. Items that you're never going to forget about, things like toothpaste, toothbrush, soap, um, face wash. It's perfectly fine if they're in a drawer because most people will remember every morning to brush their teeth and wash their face and comb their hair. So they don't need those out on the counter.
Okay.
But things that you may not remember you have to use, like certain items in the pantry or certain items in the bathroom. Those are the type of things that you want to have in a more visual or vertical space. But
Yeah.
your curling iron, you're going to go look for your curling iron to use it. So it's fine if it's hanging inside the door or in a drawer.
Yeah. But if you're in a season where like you want to start taking vitamins every day, then you might literally make your organizational decision be that your vitamins live on the counter
Yes,
because you need that visual reminder.
yes. In fact, that's exactly what I had to do.
The other idea is to just go ahead and test systems. So, we talked about makeup, and a lot of things that people do is they separate out their everyday makeup from like their high-end, especially going out makeup, or maybe like their more bold seasonal makeup. So,
Mhm.
if you have that, you could even just test with products that you have and separating them out before you go ahead and say, like, this is what I want. So, for example, I don't have a lot of makeup. All I have is every day. But if I do have like my everyday is broken down into like my nighttime and my morning stuff, well, then I had products that were in between. And so when I was doing my makeup, I thought, oh, I'm gonna just have like a morning routine box and a nighttime routine box. Well, I found out that I needed a use both times a day box, right? And so if I had gone out and just purchased two bins, I would have had this issue where I need some lotions and potions in the middle of the day, and some I need only once a day. So this is why, again, we're trying with what you have and testing it out. That's where you are in this phase. So give yourself permission to do anything. It's your home. Go as crazy as you would like.
Yes, trust your instincts about what you think may work. Because I have a different, I have every day, I use lipstick and mascara every day. I have everyday stuff in a drawer immediately. And then I have my going out evening stuff over in a cabinet tucked away in a acrylic drawers that I only use very infrequently.
Yeah.
That works out for me. But and remembering it's never one and done. I mean, that's actually the good thing is you can try these systems out, and if it's not working, then it's not right. It's not the right system for you. And sometimes you have to try things, or it may change and evolve as you change and evolve. But it's a constant cycle of
Yeah.
um, of decluttering and organizing and then optimizing.
Yeah. And one of those examples, Mary, like to give like a personal example, kind of make this a little bit more relatable, is that when we were doing our bathroom, we don't have a lot of like storage in our bathroom, and we have the
Hmm.
shower in the bathroom, and it gets humid. So I was like, you
Hmm.
know what? I'm tired of waiting to use the bathroom, and then the mirror's fogged up, and I want to be able to do my makeup, but I also want to be able to watch like kind of these motivational clips in the morning.
Hmm.
So I
Hmm.
moved my makeup into my old office because you don't really need a lot of water and stuff for that. You just kind of, it's all self-contained. And I
Hmm.
kind of created like a vanity. It's fancy. Me who doesn't have a lot of makeup. But I just took a shelf off my bookcase and I was able to organize my product and it's working amazing for me. So like if I hadn't tried that, it seems very unconventional to put your makeup in your office on a bookcase
Hmm.
shelf, but it works perfect because it's supporting my goals that I have in this season. And then maybe eventually I'll move it back to the bathroom, but for now it's working. Unlike the coffee pot, that did not work.
And you tried it and
You
it
try it.
didn't, and you changed it. And I love that because it's how you actually use the items. Because you can put on your makeup and you can watch your videos at the same
Mhm.
time, and you're not in a steamy bathroom. And yeah, it's a win-win. But if you
Yeah,
looked and said, move your makeup to your office, people would be like, beg pardon?
yeah,
No, it's great. It
yeah.
works.
And because now I know it works, because it's been many months now, many moons, I've also optimized my bins down to fit my bookcase, not just my makeup. So
Hmm.
that's again why we don't want to tell you to buy bins today, because you might be buying bins for your bathroom and find out that you need to move them to your office.
Exactly. And we talked about how do I use these items? You use them. How do you move through your day? For you, it makes sense to have them in your secondary office, and it
Mhm.
supports your goals of the ability to go through videos as you're watching as you're putting on your makeup. And it works for you. So it fits kind of all your needs. It works for you, it works for the space. It's kind of a win-win-win.
Absolutely. And again, these are the questions that we're going to be breaking down. So if we're actually going to walk through an example, this is where we would start. We would say, like, how do you do this? Even if we go see our clients, these are the exact questions that we're asking them. One of the things that you can do, because you're in your space, you're in your items, we're kind of in our old routine mindset, right? Because it's your home, your space is I like to use kind of like the chat GPT for this. Like, how can I optimize this? Or I want to do all these things. Like, what are some crazy ideas that are out there? And you can actually use an AI system like chat GPT to go and say, what would be the best way to tackle this? Or how can I even make that plan more manageable? So if you're like, you
Mhm.
know what, I really want to do my kitchen, I want to do this, can you give me a 15-minute a day plan? Then you can even have a checklist and you're not wasting all that time coming up with it yourself.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, work smarter, not harder.
Yeah.
Using the AI for any of these will give you it can give you a room plan, it can give you an idea checklist, you name it. It can help you. So I'm all for that.
And then once I map it out, well, I kind of do this more when I'm doing clients, but like a great example is if you were doing your bathroom or your kitchen,
Hmm.
label, even your pantry, like using post-it notes to just write like coffee cups are moving here or, you know, baking supplies are moving here. And then you have that post-it, which also serves as a visual reminder to your family when you move it where it's gone,
Yep.
right? But you're able to
Yep.
actually say, like, okay, today I'm moving this section or work on this cabinet or this shelf. So again, just breaking it down just avoids that overwhelm and it makes you actually be able to finish these projects.
Absolutely. And once again, the fact that you're still going to be doing decluttering.
Hmm.
That's just the way it goes. It will surface over and over again. Part of it is because we're constantly bringing new things into our house, whether it's mail or packages or whatever. And so you're decluttering and finding homes for things. And this just becomes the new normal of automatically eliminating things and finding the proper home.
Absolutely. So you're going to need a trash bag and a donation box. As you're going through the organizing phase, we're still using those because, like you said, we're going to find the multiples. We'll find the old version of an item. Like Maybe you
Mhm.
got a new hair dryer, but you still have the old one. Why? You haven't used it, But when you start looking at it like, oh, it doesn't fit, or that's another thing, right? It doesn't fit. Like you want to put all your everyday makeup in that one drawer and it doesn't fit. You gotta make some harder decisions.
Yeah, Dana K. White talked about that everything is a container. Our house is a container. A drawer is a container. The bookcase is a container. And containers can't get bigger. It has a finite space. And you really need to think hard. If it won't fit in the drawer, do you really need all of that?
Yeah.
And most of the time the answer is no.
All right. So now that we have our trash and our donation box ready and we're back in our pantry items again, we're going to stand kind of just in front of the pantry. And again, you probably did some of this in the mindset, but we're just walking through it as an example. And you're going to look at your shelves. So let's just assume in our pantry, we just have like 5 or 6 shelves in front of us. And what you're looking for here is your ideal zone that's like the best to have the items that you use frequently or that you grab for frequently is anywhere that's kind of between your eye level and your waist level. These are
Mhm.
easy to grab, easy to access. So when we're looking at this, Mary, we're looking at are there any ergonomic concerns? Like, is there a really heavy pot that you use, like a cast iron? I know, Mary, you love your cast iron. But if it was in your pantry, you don't want to put that on a high shelf or a low shelf because it's bad on your back or it can fall on you. Um, so you would want to put those items obviously where you can easily reach it. But after that, then it becomes the preference part. So like you said, Mary, with you having being a little bit shorter and your husband being taller, like you guys can actually zone your pantry based on person.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. All of his food is at the top, and everybody else's is kind of between eye and waist level. And then we subcategorize. There's lots of different ways to subcategorize it also.
Absolutely. So once you kind of get that ergonomic layout down, so you're like, okay, anything that are you actually use very often, you want to put that in the easy to reach zone. Anything that's height specific. So if you have a grandchild or a tall spouse, they might have their own space based on that. Well, now
Hmm.
we're looking at how do you actually zone the rest of the items that are in that space to work for you. So this is what you were saying, Mary. There's so many ways to do this, and there's no right way. Again, you might want to try it out. I think like canned goods is always an example. So if we look at like the magazine, they're like, oh, all your canned goods go on these perfectly designed canned good racks where they like slide down or whatever.
Hmm.
But that's not always practical. So, Mary, what are your thoughts? Like, what are some, if we're just brainstorming some of the ways that we've organized in the past for people, like, how have you
Right.
seen those kind of go?
You can organize, like you said, by category where you have all the canned goods together, all the pasta, all the cereal. But I have also seen people do shelves by meals where they have all of the breakfast, lunch at eye level, and all the dinner is either up at one or down one, or they do it by meal type. Like if you're going to have a typical pasta dinner, they have the pasta and the sauce and all of that in some type of bin, or they have all the Mexican food in a bin, or they have whatever their turkey dinner. They have these whole like bins of dinner types sorted that way. The same thing for lunches. So
Yeah.
that's two. I mean, that's three ways right there. That's bin, that's by shelf and meal, and that's just by category.
Yeah. And in our house, we sort by allergy. So like
Oh.
I don't eat gluten, my husband does. So
Mhm.
like I have my own bin. So then it's like, whose pasta is that? Well, is it mine or is it Josh's? So we are able to tell because it's like, okay, that's on his separate area, so it's not interfering with mine. But we're able to say, like, okay, if we want to have pasta dinner, do we both have a pasta? You know?
And that's very important when you have children or grandchildren with allergies, is making sure they're clear what their bins are. Or even like, say you want to be healthier and you were talking about snacks and getting the snacks up and out, make them harder to reach, not easier to reach. Or if you have the easy to reach snacks, they're the healthy ones. Like
Yeah,
anything in this bin, I know automatically is a healthy snack and I don't have to think about it. I just reach in and get it versus something that's not necessarily healthy for me. So
absolutely.
it just depends on what meets your needs and the needs of your family.
Yeah, so if you're sorting by function or you're sorting by category or whatever works for you in between. So you're going to have those items that you're actively using. And then you also probably will have some kind of a back stock, right? Especially in the pantry area, like where you accidentally brought two pasta sauces, or it's very rare that we have just enough of one to one ratio. So you're going to have a little bit of a backlog. And then you got to decide, what are you going to do with those extra items? Do you want to store them all together? If you don't have enough space and you're somebody who buys in bulk, do you have a designated space for that food to go so you can maintain it? So I know a lot of people use a closet or their garage for those kind of things. But
Mhm.
these are what you're going to try to work through as you're in that space.
Also, the very top shelf that most people don't access is an outstanding place for backstock and bulk items because you're only going to go up there to bring down what you need when you need it.
Mhm.
And it keeps because that top shelf most people just don't access in a typical
Yeah.
five shelf pantry.
Yeah. But it is nice to know like there's like if it's not in the pantry, there's one other space to go shop your house for food items only. They're not all over the house. They're not some canned goods here, some drinks are there. We're trying to consolidate them down. So
Mm.
if that happens, then you know like okay, I'm out of pasta sauce. There's not in the pantry, it's not in the backup. Whoops, we got to go to the store. You also probably want to allow for extra room though. You know, like we talked about this, like we're not buying our bins yet, but like things like potato chips, you know, like if you go out to the store and you buy 2 bags of chips, like that takes up a lot of room. But once you open them, they don't take up a lot of room.
Right.
So, you know, having a little bit of a plan for what does it look like whole.
Yeah, and I think people when they start to organize, they're trying to get as much into the space as they can, whatever the space is. And I discourage that. Give ample room between your items, whether it's in a drawer or on a shelf, because you need to make it easy to retrieve and easy to put back. So if you're knocking cans down every time you're trying to get a can out, you're going to get very frustrated. So you want to make it as easy as possible to retrieve and pull out and give yourself that space. And that's where we can at some point talk about when we get into containers, sometimes containers make sense and sometimes they don't.
Absolutely. And again, that also depends on how visual you want to be with things too. Like, do you want to have a solid basket or do you want to be able to just see the items on the shelf? Like, do you feel which one works better for you?
Hmm.
For me, if I had a solid basket on a shelf, it would look great, but I would totally forget what was in there. Or I would be frustrated, like when I'm putting away the groceries, I'd be like, oh, gotta pull that shelf down and then put it in there. But, you know, somebody who doesn't like to see a lot of their clutter, they might be really well with a labeled bin, you know, for
Yeah.
that, and they would prefer to put it in there.
Hmm. I think labels are very important, whether it's a clear bin or whether it's an opaque bin, because then that signals to everyone in the family what goes in there.
Hmm.
So everyone can participate with putting things away and everyone can participate with getting things out.
Yeah. So whatever works again for your pantry and for your lifestyle, this is kind of where you're thinking through like what foods am I currently eating? What am I never gonna eat again that gotta go? If you didn't declutter initially, maybe now's the time you're like, oh, I really would like a designated area for that. Go ahead and declutter those items. Is there anything else though, like if you're organizing and we're looking at the pantry, we got our ergonomics done, we got our everyday high usage items that we want to see in our specified zone. Seasonal is up on the top shelf.
Hmm.
Um, I guess the only other thing then you would probably have a few like homeless items, right? So we did talk about this a little bit earlier, but if you think about in a pantry, like you're gonna have something like the bread maker or the extra grocery bags, like from when you come home and you have the extra plastic bags. So what are
Hmm.
your kind of your thoughts on that, Mary?
Well, once again, you really need to think. I always talk about how many plastic bags does any person really need? And
Hmm.
how many brown paper bags does any one person really need? And here is the good news is they do make wonderful holders now for plastic bags. I encourage people to, they're not expensive. Get one and get it on the back of the door or whatever. But you don't need to keep every plastic bag. You certainly can send them back to your grocery store and recycle them. The same thing with brown paper bags. You also don't want to draw, certain insects really like paper and they like brown paper. So you don't want to draw those into your kitchen. So
Yeah,
I think you really need to minimize that use. I encourage people to only keep as much as you can put in one little box.
absolutely. But I think also you can look at now that you have your items in your pantry, if you have something like a bread machine or something like that where you don't have a good spot in the pantry and you're just like, what do I do with this? Like, I like it, I use it, what do I do? Now might be a good time to go see if there's other space in your home that you can move food out of to
Hmm.
put in your bread maker. So for example, like in our kitchen, we have a corner cabinet that would fit the appliance, but it has dreaded canned goods. So, like, could I move those canned goods now into that pantry? And so, this is where that tweaking is coming into. And that's okay because we're still in that organizing phase. And if there's something that's just really random, because all sorts of random things are in your pantry, if they got back in there and you don't know what to do with it, that's where that having that bin of like homeless items, that's now going to join your paper and sentimental clutter until you can kind of figure out where that goes in your space.
And I think sometimes homeless items are telling us that we may not need them,
Hmm.
that we haven't touched them, we haven't used them, we don't have a place for them. So that might be a good indicator that maybe we don't need them. We need to let them go and uh, or work on a new area to give us more space for these homeless items. It kind of is you know what it is? It's a lovely little domino effect or trickle down that you start working on one area and then it really leads and encourages another and another and another. So
Absolutely. Yeah, but don't let that item ruin your whole pantry organization experience. If it doesn't fit, push it out and go from there. Mary, is there anything else that you wanted to cover in terms of organization? I was just looking over our notes. I think we got everything.
I think we did. I agree with you. I think we did.
Okay.
It is kind of a trial and error. That is the reality for most people. And you just keep working through and you're going to know when you like it because you won't have to keep fixing it.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. And staying true to yourself because
yeah.
marketers want you to buy bins. Walmart
Yes.
wants you to buy the bins. So just keep it to
Hmm.
yourself that you got to do what works for you and your home and be okay with it. And next week, we are going to be talking about bins finally, which we actually personally do love bin shopping. It is like one of the perks of being an organizer. We get to try out a bunch of the different things. So
Hmm.
we'll be talking a little bit about that. And I think like when you're ready to move into that optimizing stage is when you can kind of like clearly call out where things go. If you say like, "Oh, I got this can of beans," and you're like, "Oh, it goes exactly here," or
Hmm.
whatever, then you kind of know that your space is ready. Like you're able to say like, "Oh, here in my bathroom, this is where this is. This is where that is," and you're confident with that.
Right.
Um,
Because you don't want to waste the money. You don't want to go, bins are not cheap.
mm-mm,
Storage things are not cheap. I don't care if they're small or big. And you don't want to waste that time and money for things that you don't need, don't like, can't use, don't want.
yeah. Instead, girl math it and buy something really pretty, very high end then when you're done because you know it's gonna last. And that does actually make sense. So, okay, so we're gonna talk about optimizing and maintaining next week.
Yep,
And if you're ready, Mary, we'll sign off for this week. And again, guys, check the description box below for our organizing and decluttering guide, as well as information on our next live. All right,
absolutely.
cheers, friend.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye-bye.